Okay, welcome everyone to the CETPartnership Impact Dialogue from Innovation to Societal Change. My name is Tanja Suni. I represent the CETPartnership Impact Support Team. And with me today here I have Susanna Kupiainen, also from the Impact Support Team, helping with technical issues and in the end with the interactive part. Hi, Susanna. So nice to have you all here. Let's get started. So this is the program for today. I'll use a few minutes, 10 minutes maybe in the beginning now for the introduction. So I'll tell you all what CETPartnership is. We have stakeholders here in addition to our projects, so not everybody is familiar with what we do. Then I'll move on to the event purpose and how we are going to work today. And please, everybody, keep your microphones off when in the audience. And then I'll briefly introduce you to the CETPartnership Impact Landscape that we call the Impact Network. This is a launch of the Impact Network and also the Impact Library. These are resources for our projects and applicants to try and to help them with stakeholder engagement, finding partners and how to work with them. After this introduction, we will move on to our topics. So we have 3 rounds. In each of these rounds, we have one CETPartnership project presenting their way of doing stakeholder engagement and what they have learned and who they have collaborated with and how it has been maybe difficult or beneficial. After that, we have a stakeholder who has worked with CETPartnership before, telling us a little bit about their perspective and views on collaboration. And after that, there'll be a short dialogue, about 10 minutes, where they can speak with each other and I can ask questions. And at that point, I can also take questions from the chat if we have time. It may be that we don't because we have so many people joining us today, but let's see.
Tanja, you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, what happened there? Let's try again. Let's try again. Here. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So first the introduction to CETPartnership, then the event purpose and format, then the impact network, and then the rounds that I mentioned. So the first round will be about societal readiness and standards. So issues related to societal acceptance, fit for purpose, things like that. And then we move to round 2, which is about scaling and implementation. And finally, we have a break at that point. And then our round 3 is going to be about commercialization and the funding journey. And as I mentioned, in each of these, we have a CETPartnership project presenting and then a stakeholder loosely or more closely related to this particular topic. After that, we'll go to a 5-minute presentation of how we support our projects and applicants. I'll show you a 1-minute video about our impact support tools, and then a couple of minutes I'll spend looking at the Impact Library, which is a resource for supporting your ways of working with stakeholders. And then finally, we go to the shared reflection part where we have Menti questions for everybody here. And we'll also have a bit of an interview with our speakers about the replies and answers and results we are getting from the Menti interaction, and we'll take it from there. And finally, we'll end at about 4 o'clock with summary and final words. So starting now about what is the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. So we are a European co-funded partnership, and our aim is to facilitate and accelerate the clean energy transition in Europe and beyond. We align innovation priorities, we pool funding and leverage knowledge and experience from more than 30 countries, together with about 50 public funders. What we have done over these years, we started in 2022 officially, and we had worked towards that for a couple of years before. So we have established a hopefully very impactful transnational innovation community with the aim of driving forward the clean energy transition. And what we mean by impactful is projects which inspire action and innovations which are recognized internationally and produce transferable solutions which will at one point be adopted by society. And the community we mean is a community of change makers from all over the spectrum related to clean energy transition. Researchers, corporates, entrepreneurs, policymakers, visionaries, everyone who has participated in creating scalable and impactful solutions towards hopefully a climate neutral world. So on a map, this is how we look like. We have 30 plus countries, as mentioned, EU member states and associated countries. More than 47 funding partners, and that means funding agencies and ministries typically. They pool the funding for our calls, and on top of that, we get what is called a top-up funding from the European Commission, and they are the single biggest financing organization in this partnership. We open annual calls for RTDI projects, approximately 100 to 140 million euros per year. For instance, in 24, the total was above more than 130 million euros. And with that money, we typically fund 50 to 60 projects a year. That means that at the moment, they are 3-year-long projects. So at any moment, we will have approximately 165 projects running, spanning a variety of technologies and spanning a variety of countries. Here you can see just a snapshot of a few of those projects. And today we have 3 of these projects presenting. Then about today. So this is the impact dialogue that is trying to be a dialogue between these innovators in our projects and stakeholders that are related to those solutions. And we are going to talk about on what it really takes to move clean energy innovations from idea to use, from lab to market, and how collaboration at all levels can also promote system-level change. And from our discussions, hopefully you will get a glimpse of all of these different levels where collaboration is necessary. So who do we have here today? We have 6 speakers, half of them CET partnership projects and half of them stakeholders who have worked with us before. And at some point, hopefully more than 200 of you joining online. We have almost 300 registered participants today. And we'll work together so that each round, as I mentioned, will include a project and a stakeholder and a space for a short dialogue between these speakers. And we really encourage you, the audience, to use the chat, to share your reflections, to engage with each other, and to ask questions. This is all about a dialogue. And I'll bring these questions that you present into the discussion as much as time allows. It may be that we can't do very much, but we'll try. So now, finally, I'll just briefly introduce our landscape analysis that we did about the clean energy transition within Europe. We call this the Impact Network, and it connects actors across the clean energy innovation journey from research and testing to policy, funding, and market uptake. And I'll stop sharing this for a moment, and I'll start sharing the Impact Network. Here. So you can find this at the link mentioned there, and we can also put the link in the chat at some point. The idea here is, as I said, to connect different types of actors that are typical collaborators at different parts of the journey from the lab to market. And you can see here 1 to 8 categories along that journey. So technology development and value chain, testing and validation, market analysis and business planning, policy and regulation, societal engagement and sustainability, demonstration and upscaling, commercialization and funding. And here you can, for instance, look at technology and development and value chain. If you click energy, technology and service providers, industrial end users, off-takers and networks of SMEs, most of them are actually concentrated on Brussels, so they are all on top of each other there. But if you scroll a little bit further down, you'll see them also as a list. So here you can see, for instance, the Carbon Capture and Storage Association, the Clean Energy Buyers Alliance, or Climate Group RE100. So you see that these are mostly intermediary organizations, not individual companies. And that is because we couldn't put in on the map thousands of different companies or organizations. So we focused on intermediaries. But underneath each of these, you will find dozens or hundreds or maybe sometimes even 1,000 target organizations that you can consider partnering with or contacting as you need. When you use this map, remember to reset the filter after your searches, so your previous choice stops applying. Testing and validation, very important. The majority of our projects are at the stage where they are doing this. And we have here about 80 test beds and living labs. And these are individual organizations or individual test beds and living labs. So you can hover your mouse on top of one of these dots and get a snapshot of what this is about. And if you click the dot, you get a little bit more information, where it is, what the description is, what they are offering, and then information also about how to contact them. You also have them here as a list. Then if we move forward, for instance, to funding, you can find here angel investors, corporate venture capital, or venture capital. You can see them here. We have angel list. We have different corporations that have their own venture arms like BP. We have Breakthrough Energy Ventures. We have Invest Europe, we have Saint-Gobain Nova, all of these. And also you can find public funding organizations. You get them here, the European Innovation Council, European Regional Development Fund, also other co-funded partnerships and initiatives like Geothermica, and Horizon Europe Innovation Actions, for instance. That's one of the typical next steps for our projects. Not, of course, the only one, but a typical one. So this is how you can use this impact network as a source of ideas and maybe even real contacts. So we hope you can find this useful. So I'm stopping now sharing this one, and we'll go back to the master slide set. Here we go. And now we are right on time. It's 15:15. So at this point, we will start our first round. So if I can get Bilge and Jean-Luc opening your video so we can see you. Welcome. Excellent to have you here. Excellent to have you here. So here we have Bilge Shanturk from the Transmit project. And they have conducted a really extensive early stage stakeholder engagement for their innovation, which has to do with building integrated solar PV solutions. And then we have Jean-Luc Vitor from the Eco Standards NGO, and what they are doing is promoting policy and standards for environmentally sustainable technical standards, policies, and laws. And we will first hear from Bilge, about 10 minutes, and I'll holler at you if you are going very much over time, but don't be stressed by that. After that, we'll get a question from Bilge, most likely to Jean-Luc. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll move to Jean-Luc, and then we'll have a bit of a dialogue. So without further ado, Bilge, please go ahead. Do you want to share your slides from your own computer?
Yes, I'll try.
Great. Perfect.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay,
if you put it in presentation mode.
Mm-hmm. So, do you see my full screen, or?
We see the PowerPoint, but we don't yet see it in presentation mode. So we see the file.
Really? Now, because I see my first slide that's written round 1, societal readiness and standards.
We see that too, but it's not yet in presentation mode. So if you can just do that. Excellent. There we go.
Okay. And Yes, my name is Bilge. Welcome everyone again to our dialogue. And I'm an associate professor on economics. Sorry. And I'm coming from the Middle East Technical University. I'm working in the Solar Energy Research Center in Ankara. And today I'm going to share our experience with early stakeholder engagement studies and social readiness level steps within the Transmit project. And I will try to show you where are the benefits and lessons of this kind of a collaboration here. As the name suggests, Transmit focuses on a technology involving the integration of microstrip thin film semi-transparent photovoltaics into windows. And the main coordinator of our project is Pedro Anacleto. He's from International Iberian Nanotechnology Laboratory from Braga, Portugal. And as ODTÜ Günam, we are responsible for conducting the socioeconomic analysis of this technology. So when we look at the core of the structure of Transmit, we see clearly defined technical targets such as efficiency, transparency, and aesthetics. And in addition, across all research stage, we follow certain core values such as ethics and gender considerations. And within this framework, we are carrying out some societal impact assessments across different work packages. Yes, our work on societal dimensions on the stakeholder engagement side, together with our team, you see the names here, we conduct 20 expert interviews. And these experts were selected based on the quadruple helix model and representing here governments, academia, industry, and civil society organizations. In addition, we interviewed with 8 potential end users from 4 different vulnerable groups, such as elderly and disabled participants. But we paid a particular attention for gender balancing. Now, when we look at our methodologies, I would like to briefly explain the steps that we follow for the societal readiness levels. But at first, we have 2 basic questions, 2 main questions. How did stakeholder perspectives reshape the project? And if we were to start again, what would we do differently here? While addressing these questions, we follow the fundamental methodological principles of CRL from CTP directions. And of course, at the proposal stage, we had already been established a CRL1 for problem definition and initial impact assessment. And then at the beginning of the work package, we identified the key stakeholders and conduct our interviews as part of the initial testing phase. And in the upcoming stage from now we will move towards CRL5, where technical and environmental validation results will be evaluated together with stakeholders in a well-designed workshop next year. And follow these steps. Now you see the diagram here. We use the Bernstein stage gate model. As you see from the all processes, we opened a gate at each phase to ask different questions for assessing progress and outcomes for the different stakeholders. Now we see a little complex table here, but I'm not going to give too much detail about it. Just show you the framework that shows how we are collecting the qualitative data. And it helps us work systematically, actually, to evaluate the insights gathered at each stage. And although I will not go into detail here, but I want to mention some important case studies that shows us the all expert and user perspectives have revealed some critical gaps in certain thematic areas. For example, we tried here to show you some cases. First one, regarding efficiency, visual comfort, and aesthetics. In Transmit project, we have main targets, main assumptions on, for example, 50% of transparency, 8% of efficiency. But when we make the interviews with the stakeholders, we see that not only the technical targets, also we need to find some multi-objective designs for focusing on different typologies of the different building styles, like residential type, commercial type. And if we had start from the beginning with this perspective, we would also have incorporated glare analysis also, which is about the visual comfort more directly. And another one is about the reliability, or in other words, trust. And in this project, we basically focus on two emerging technologies, CIGS and perovskite. To better highlight the unique advantage of focusing these technologies, we could have explored new approaches where both technologies are used together. At the project stage, we changed our perspective to analyze different microclimates and different facades of the buildings. But if we start from the beginning, we could combine both technologies from their different beneficial sides within the same microclimate or within the same facade constructions. And the other one, in the safety domain, we focus only on mini module testing and validation here. However, we should also consider the risk, for example, related to glass breakage, the risk of glass breakage. And in the industrial acceptance or market acceptance, we initially adopt a linear innovation model, and we conduct socioeconomic as an independent work package. So later on, we realized the importance of, for example, material risk assessment in the market acceptance. So if we start again, we would make a comprehensive supply chain management analysis and includes long-run costs and financial risks for the stakeholders. And at the end, as a case to show you social acceptance, again, we start from a linear innovation model and make this or plan the stakeholder engagement as an independent work package again, or task. But after our interviews, because we start our stakeholder engagement very early, it will be very helpful to collect different perspectives from the beginning, and then we change our plan to be more earlier. But at the end, if we start again, we would have planned all the process to be co-created in all TRL levels. And for the overall, yes, to sum up our results, we can say that our results show, firstly, a technology-oriented focus, because our project's main approach was technology-oriented and linear innovation model. But with the new perspectives, we add cost, regulation, trust, and awareness, such kind of new perspectives, changed our project approach to a socio-technical approach, from technology-oriented focus to socio-technical transition focus. So this shows us we need a new standard on more socio-technical side. And for the linear innovation model, we just look at going from TRL 3 to reach TRL 5, and socioeconomic analysis was independent, and we wait an automatically market acceptance at the end of this innovation process. But we find some new perspectives that this innovation model is not linear, is non-linear, and it has a really complex engagement strategies with strategic stakeholders, and it was a really technopolitical integrated model. So as a new standard, we see that within or alongside of all TRL levels, we need CRL, societal readiness level integration. So today I want you to summarize the benefits and lessons of our stakeholder collaboration, basically. And now I am finishing my presentation. Thank you for your listening and attending.
Thank you very much, Bilge. This was extremely interesting. I like the term non-linear innovation model. That's nice. It really captures how you what you experience, that you try to go linearly and then you find that it's not actually very easy, and you need to go back and you need to reiterate, and that it would have been maybe easier to do things from the beginning. Thank you very much. And at this point, before we move to Jean-Luc, I wonder if there's something you would like to get his perspective on.
Yeah, to Klaus Meyer here, my question would be, how's the consortium set up in terms of technical background and maybe social science background?
Yes, our technical side is coming from the technical groups on CIGS technology, from INL, perovskite technology from Italy, and Cyprus will make the test and validations. One Turkish site, Middle East Technical University, will test the building modelings, energy efficiency, and ODTÜ Günam, the social expertise group, will make the societal dimensions like stakeholder engagement and techno-economic analysis. These are our team to collaborate within the project.
Thank you. And at this point, yes, thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask Jean-Luc if you have any comments on Bilge's presentation from maybe your background, standards, whatever policies and sustainability, or maybe from your work with policies, or whatever aspect you might think of.
Well, first, Bilge, thank you very much for this presentation. That was very interesting to listen to. My questions won't be very highly informed ones, because it's a bit different, of course, from my background. And I was wondering, I must admit, I'd never heard of the societal readiness level before. The TRLs are very, very well known to me. But is this a concept that is used in many projects to your knowledge, or is this really also, is this innovative?
Yeah, it's very new. To be honest, at the beginning of the project, Transmit project, Yes, we have some documents on how to work with CRL, but it's not an obligatory, I think. So in the project consortium, yes, we have our own work package on techno-economic, socioeconomic impact analysis. And there was another work package on communication and project management. So when we start stakeholder engagement before their work package, we find the insights from CRL methodologies. So we collaborate with them and start to work together. So after that, since we have already made early stakeholder engagement, then we feed their work package by following the instructions from CTP, following the instructions from the literature, from the academic paper, and also the Horizon project instructions. So we learned by doing.
Excellent. I could maybe add to that the concept of societal readiness level as such has actually been around a little bit longer, from 2018, when the Danish Innovation Fund, I believe, was the first one to actually publish a scale, like a TRL scale, but an SRL scale, which you showed in your presentation. And we have a tool that you also referred to, the CETPartnership Impact Library tool, that follows that scale. But also you showed another methodology from 22. You had that literature reference there, the stage gate model. So yeah, it's the concept of societal readiness level is maybe 8 years old, but the idea that you need to involve the stakeholders in a structured way is much older. And if you might be younger, much younger than me, everybody here speaking, but in the 2010s, it was called co-design of research with stakeholders and co-production of research with stakeholders. It's pretty much the same idea, that you test your ideas with stakeholders, you get feedback from them at different stages. So that's basically the idea, and the societal readiness level just structures it along these 9 levels that you showed. But I can show you the tool in the CETPartnership Impact Library at the end when I'm going to show the library. But excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jean-Luc. Let's move now to you, Jean-Luc. So you want to show your presentation on your computer, I believe. So go ahead and share your slides.
Very good. 1 second. You should be able to see the slides now. Is that correct?
Yes, we are seeing them. Not yet in presentation mode.
Is it not? Wait. Oh,
Not
yes,
yet.
I see. Yeah. But now it is, I believe.
Yes. Excellent.
Very good. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present here. And I will be talking about a few topics of current interest when it comes to policies and standards also for sustainable markets. Maybe a few words first about our organization. ECOS is an international NGO, and we have a broad network of members and experts, and we generally, historically, we worked only on standardization, but nowadays we look a lot at policies and laws. We do that to a large extent at the European level because we have our Brussels headquarters and a lot of our history in Brussels, but we also opened a second office in Nairobi 3 years ago, and that is we're really expanding those activities as well, and we're also engaging in global topics, for example, via different UN institutions and the ISO, the International Standardization Organization. Today, I will be talking a lot about the IAA, the Industrial Accelerator Act that the European Commission recently released as a Commission proposal. I will be very strongly focusing on cement and concrete and steel as 2 topics that are of eminent importance to us because of their carbon footprint and their potential for decarbonization, but also their use in buildings. I will also talk a bit about labels and quotas. There are many other aspects to the Industrial Accelerator Act that I will not go into today for obvious time reasons. So where does this Industrial Accelerator Act come from? Well, first and foremost, the word Industrial Decarbonization Accelerator Act was first mentioned a bit more than a year ago when the Commission released its Clean Industrial Deal, which was, dare I say, a beautiful promise on climate action and competitiveness, trying to accelerate decarbonization, reindustrialization, and innovation. And in that Clean Industrial Deal, it said that the Industrial Decarbonization Accelerator Act, as it was called at that moment, will develop a voluntary label on the carbon intensity of industrial products. And they said they would start with steel in 2025, so which was last year. As ECOS, we thought this is a very good thing. This is extremely important because if you have a label that you would stick on steel for its carbon footprint, you would ensure comparability, but also visibility. You would be able to differentiate between those materials that have a higher and a lower carbon footprint because of different production methods. And you would also send a very clear signal to the market, to investors, that there is a certain direction in that those markets should take to decarbonize. So that sounded very good. We also thought at that moment, well, what could such a scheme look like? And we tried to root it in European policies to come up with a proposal how this could look like. And so really a number of classes that are very low in greenhouse gas intensity, so that you could really show these are the good products and promote them and also get them used in public procurement. Reality, alas, is often different from the promise, and after a few months of delay and the drop of the decarbonization in the name of the law, the Industrial Accelerator Act was officially proposed a bit more than a month ago, and I would even go as far to say it is probably even an IA only, in the sense that it's not clear to me what it will accelerate, but it is for sure an industrial act. The proper where they said, the Commission said, yeah, they didn't actually follow their preferred option, which is a bit an odd statement, isn't it? And they would not propose yet a voluntary label. So that was the first disappointment, and then said they would use the ESPR, the Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation, and use that to develop a label instead, for reasons that are not necessarily very easy to follow. When you look into the legal text in Article 10 of the IAA proposal, you see that indeed there is something a bit different, because here there's only a mandate to develop a definition for low carbon steel, which is not necessarily the same as a label. And the IAA delegates that task to the Construction Products Regulation and to the Eco Design Regulation for the non-construction products. The Commission talked a lot about simplification over the last 2 years. This is not exactly simplification. You're already splitting things up. And when we're looking at steel being, after all, one of the most carbon intensive products in the world, about half of it is construction steel. That one would be under one piece of legislation. The other half would be under another piece of legislation. And that is where it starts to become complicated. Then there are also very different messages being sent out by the Commission, and it's a tale of extremes, and somehow probably reality will be somewhere in the middle. But if you look into the impact assessment of the Industrial Accelerator Act, which has the nice acronym of IAAIA, on page 267, if you have the patience to read till there, you see a graph that looks like this. I have redrawn it here because some of the letters were a bit blurry in the original version. You can see here, for those who are familiar with some very well-known steel labeling schemes that are out there on the market, fairly well known, fairly well accepted also by many players. It has a certain resemblance of this, saying if you're on the left-hand side of that graph, loads of primary production, so virgin material. There are different classes. On the right-hand side, your recycling steel. They're much closer to each other. You would put names on letters on the different classes. This is one that is extremely strong in decarbonizing and on generating investment, but will probably be met with fierce opposition from those who wouldn't want the market to change. On the other hand, the Commission, just a different branch of it, just recently, about 10 days ago, put forward a proposal for what the label could look like under the SPR. I agree that the colors look better, but the numbers look worse. Just to show you on the left-hand side, to be in the top two classes, there you would have to have a carbon footprint of 600 kilograms per ton of steel, and even actually 150 when you're recycling. Here you get up to 2,660 kilograms of CO2. So a more than fourfold difference in stringency or in ambition. If this gets through, it will very likely lead to no investment, no innovation, and also no decarbonization. So at the moment, it's guessing a bit where the Commission is heading when they're proposing within a matter of 6 weeks to so very different concepts. Another one is quotas. The IAA also says if you procure as a public procurer green steel, there must be at least 25% of the steel that must be low carbon steel, where the definition is not set yet, and for cement, 5% of the volume. But the devil is, as so often, in the details or in the numbers. And if this is the total of the steel market, actually, yeah, about half of it, the green part, is construction steel. So that is the part that is of interest to us. But of course, not all of that is procured publicly. Private procurement is most. That's not affected by this piece of legislation. So there's already a fairly small share of the pie. And even there, most of public procurement is not done at the European level under European legislation. So the national legislation obviously does not count here, and the size gets again smaller. And if you take a quarter of this part, then you have the share of low carbon steel that is actually being pushed by the IAA into the European market on the construction side. I can tell you that on the vehicle side, it does not necessarily look much better. But in general, that is how ineffective this is likely going to be. That was for steel. When I'm showing you cement, there 5% already looks like it's not going very far. Also there, at least all cement is construction cement. But where did they come? How did they come up with that number? And it's because the Commission looked at final investment decision projects for low carbon cement. That is very clearly an odd idea because it presupposes that you need investment to reduce carbon footprint of cement, whereas we know that there are so many supplementary cementitious materials that you can use to get to very low levels. Also, alkali activated cements allow you to get to very low carbon footprints, but they don't need much investment. And how would the Commission know about this? So that is again putting the bar at the wrong level and doing it in such a way that it will not trigger very much of a market movement. I'm also showing you here that we're doing this as ECOS to some extent, but also in coalition with industrial partners and other organizations. We're doing that via the Buy Better to Build Better coalition on public procurement, and we're doing it via the Alliance of Low Carbon Cement and Concrete on cement and concrete. So all of that frustration, which I've now shared with you, also should lead me to a few recommendations that is now important for the co-decision phase for the Industrial Accelerator Act, so that where the European Parliament and the European Council will be talking about this and working on it. And on the other hand, on the SPR, the eco-design side, refining the current concepts so that it will have an effect not to discourage investment and innovation, and to promote decarbonization. So what needs to be done here? I think the missed opportunities that we're having here on climate protection, innovation, and investment must be recognized and talked about, and there's still time to improve here, and there's a lot of policy coherence that must be reinforced here with climate legislation, with the emissions trading, CBAM, and the carbon border adjustment mechanism, and also with the Net Zero Act, which one of the flagships of the former Commission, and which is, of course, a plan for the next 10 years at least, or the next 20 years. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to bring to your attention that in 2 days, we will be hosting a webinar together with the climate group, where we will be talking about these same topics, but with a little more detail. And that brings me to my very last slide, and that's to say thank you very much for listening and for being here.
Thank you very much. Very important presentation, and quite a bit of an alarming one. What I take really from that presentation is that really it's not only about developing these low carbon solutions, but about creating the right policy and market conditions for them to actually succeed, and that unpredictability is really poison for these clean energy solutions. And this really requires ongoing interaction between different actors. We now have about 6 minutes to have a bit of a discussion. So I'll first ask you, Jean-Luc, from your perspective, you talked about what needs to happen, but how does this kind of influencing work that you do actually happen in practice? So who do you engage with and how? And after that, I'd like to ask Bilge actually how you see these things happening in your own work. So do these unpredictable developments in policies affect your solution and its market prospects? Have you seen this? You mentioned supply chain and you mentioned pricing issues, so I'm guessing they might have something to do with this. But first, I'd like to ask Jean-Luc about this engagement work that you do. Who do you actually contact, and how do you work with them?
So these are processes involving different people, and it's also they're long processes. The whole IAEA discussions and ESPR discussions, we started them internally about 2 years ago when we started developing also our concept proposal that I showed you on one of the slides. That was some internal discussions. Then we went to external experts who refined and really checked the details and the soundness of what we were proposing, and then we started talking very much to different organizations within our ecosystem, other NGOs, think tanks, but also the people in the European institutions, in companies, talking with different, all different stakeholders, and seeing what is important to them, and where we find common ground, or where there are disagreements that can or cannot be resolved. But in many cases, at least when you agree on the general idea that decarbonization should happen, it's not such a long way to resolve disagreements.
Yes, so it's about finding that common ground, very much like what Bilge was presenting, that you have to find the interest, you have to find the benefit for all those different stakeholder groups. So what I find is common between you two is that you both have a huge distribution of different types of stakeholders that you engage. And you both have to find the kind of the lever that works with each of them and the common ground so that you can move on towards the same direction. But Bilge, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yes, our work is also focused on the policy-driven market creation, just like the next presentation. And it's like little complementary studies within the same session. So yes, we interviewed with more than 20 experts, and the most important one was the governmental authorities.
Right.
So if you remember, our technology is coming from the BIPV technologies, building integrated PV technologies. So we went to municipalities, because in Turkish case, the constructions, the urban constructions are very directed by municipalities, but
right.
The municipalities need the regulations, standardizations, which is also created by the ministries. So we went to ministries also. And at the beginning of the project, we have an energy efficiency law in Turkey, and it was it announced an obligation that if you have a huge building surface, then you have to use 5% of renewable energy for your energy efficiency on the building. But when it was good, because since there is a regulation in a country, that means this technology will expand. This technology will be industrialized, and it will be triggered. But when we are working, then this regulation multiplied by the percentage. I mean, you have to change your energy efficiency or energy type to renewable energy by 5%, but 1 year later it becomes 10%.
Yeah. So that's
yes.
the predictable way it's going forward. So okay, that's great. So one more question actually to you, Bilge. You said that it's very important for your innovation and your work to do market shaping. So market shaping is precisely what Jean-Luc, you are also doing. So you are trying to shape the market so that it will become favorable to these new technologies, and in that it will also step on the toes of those incumbent corporations that are benefiting from the current situation, so basically the fossil economy. But to Bilge, I'd like to ask, how much do you think that one project can influence, or how big an effect can it have in market shaping, or maybe it cannot? You just mentioned that you're working with this, or I understood you're working with this energy efficiency lobby in Turkey. So you have to have a bigger organization working with you. One project cannot do it alone. Is that your experience?
Yes, but they were really interested in our results. But since this was the early stage engagement, then we cannot share our, for example, efficiency results, our panel performance results, and reliability results. So when we went to gatekeepers, if we have the next step that we are going to visit them, we will have our results, test results by us, and we are sure that they are going to use these results for your institutional research activities, because they are really interested in, since they have the regulatories inside.
Yeah.
they really need the technical solutions. So Transmit will give really good results for their research fields also.
Very, very important. So working with such advocacy groups is something that any one project can do if it's, you know, interesting enough for them, and then they can take it forward. That's very, very important. Thank you so much. We have to move forward now, but thank you very much for this very, very interesting dialogue. And we will meet you again in the end when we have the interactive part. So thank you. At this point, go and grab a cup of coffee and listen to the next presentations and talks. So thanks. We'll see you in a minute.
Thank you very much.
And next we move on to our round 2. Let's get back to the main slide set. And let's move forward now to the next stage. I believe we are here. You can probably see this. So this is round 2, scaling and implementation. And at this point, I'd like to ask Soledad van Eyck and Kimmo Järvinen to the stage. There you are. And Kimmo, I believe you are there. Hi. So welcome. Very nice to have you here. Soledad represents the Greensmith project from CETPartnership. And they are one of the quite few projects that are really high on the TRL level. And in the chat, I could see that we were already having some discussions about high TRL level. So this might be interesting to you. So you are working on a carbon capture technology for flue gases, and you are already thinking about a first-of-a-kind commercial deployment, as well as developing lower TRL parts and improvements, I understand, in your technology. So you have the whole TRL kind of journey in front of you all the time. And then Kimmo Järvinen represents SSAB Steel Company, a global steel company, and he will be talking a little bit about what a steel company expects from an innovation and more about his perspectives as well. So at this point, I will stop sharing and give the floor to Soledad.
Thank you all for having me here. So I'm Soledad van Eyck. I'm a business developer at TNO, which is the Dutch Applied Institute. And indeed, I'm going to talk you along the first-of-a-kind deployment and TRL bottlenecks that we're running against. So the CET project that I'm representing is Greensmith, but I will take you also along the journey, of course, of the whole TRL development and the lessons learned, because in the CETPartnership project Greensmith, we're combining TRL 5 and TRL level 8 developments. But of course, it didn't start at this project. So to give you some of the lessons learned, I will have to go back a bit in time. So I will start briefly with the context of our development, then our development path, and then end with some lessons learned. And very happy to also then in the chat or here have some discussions with you. So first the context, and this is interesting. This is shown already in previous presentations, so there's a nice link. So this is some facts that, because our technology is a carbon capture technology, but we focus a lot on reducing the CO2 emissions for the iron and steel industry. And there's a reason for that, because it's very high on the CO2 footprint. And there's a number of ways, which also in a previous presentation was briefly touched upon, that you can reduce the carbon footprint or the CO2 footprint of your steel. And as recycling scrap, improving the efficiency, but also switching to reductants like hydrogen or electrical routes, but also capturing the CO2 and permanent sequestration options. And in the Greensmith project, we're focusing both on switching the reductants and capturing the CO2. And we used the stepwise technology to do so. And the stepwise technology is a technology developed by TNO. I don't have a lot of slides explaining the technology because I want to focus more on the path we took towards the first of a kind and the lessons that I can share with you. But very quickly, what does the technology do? So it does not capture CO2 from flue gases. So not when you already have all your combustion and all your processes. It is what they also call a pre-combustion capture or in-process capture. What we do if there's still syngas in the system, we do absorption enhanced water gas shift. So that's your regular water gas shift reaction. So CO and water to CO2 and hydrogen. But we capture simultaneously as we do the reaction. So in one reactor, we do the reaction and we capture the CO2, which makes it that we can have a separate stream of CO2 and one of hydrogen. So we're actually producing blue hydrogen with this technology. And this hydrogen you can use for a lot of things, and I'll show you what you can use it for. But the focus is on the agonist. Okay. But I want to take you along a bit on because a lot of the CET projects are now TRL 4 or 5. So you're at a very crucial stage in your development as far as we see it. So around 20 to 25 years ago, the idea of the stepwise technology started in the lab, like with most of our developments, just an idea and have one of your lab equipment do a proof of concept. And based on that, you start to get your funds and you're doing all these projects. So this is, I think, very similar to what you will see for every development of a technology, right? We process from TRL step to TRL by getting funds for each new project. What I want to focus on is the last 3 steps. So TRL 6, 7, and now going 8. And I'll start with the TRL 6 project we did. So that was the stepwise column. And this was the first time that we actually started testing the concept with real industrial steel gases. So we did that in the north of Sweden at Sveren, so which is a research center. And we built there a single column, so of 10 meters high and 40 centimeters in diameter, processing quite some gases, so 800 normal cubic meters per hour. And that was really necessary for this TRL 6 step because carbon capture in general, and especially for steel, is very, you're talking about large installations. So already for your TRL 6, you're going to big steps. So, and what do we do? I already said it. So we do CO2 capture from the residual gases from the steel plant. And these are the gases that normally are used for power generation. So a lot of the gases from, so in a steel plant, a lot of the residual gases still contain a lot of energy and they are used to make power. But they are not the most efficient way, but because of the amount of energy, you can use it. And what we showed in this project is that we have a very high efficient capture performance with our technology, and that the energy we consume is 2 megajoules per kilogram of CO2 captured. So that means, what we came out of this project is that we have a cost advantage compared to state-of-the-art capture solutions of 35% for this case. And this is very important, right? If you're developing a new technology, you really should focus also on showing what is the added benefit compared to state of the art, because that's, although we all are driven by wanting to do the best, technologies should really outperform to be able to move through the TRL level. Another big advantage of our technology is the low impact on the LCA factors. So that's really reduced compared, for instance, with the amine scrubbing technologies, which are very known for CO2 capture. So our technology has a very low LCA. In the picture, you see some of the results of the actual campaigns where we reached high CO2 purities and CCR's carbon capture rate, so the amount of carbon dioxide capture. So this was already some time ago. Currently, we are even performing better than the results here. But I don't have the results to show, but I'll tell a bit about it. So the stepwise project was TRL 6 really focused on showing that we can capture the CO2. Then we talked about sequestration, but we can also talk about utilization of the CO2. So that's the first thing we did. And this was really to strengthen the business case, to show that because we also produce hydrogen, keep that in mind. So you can use the hydrogen, of course, to make electricity, but we also always had the idea if we could use some of the hydrogen, for instance, in combination with the CO2, to make a product, you can even increase your business case. So in the Freshmade project, we showed that we can make methanol. One of the reasons we chose methanol is because methanol can be a great replacement for shipping fuel. And that's also what we demonstrated. So we really got the complete value chain in this project. So we also had the Stena line. So Stena, which is a ferry company, joined, and they actually sailed on the methanol that was produced from the residual gases coming from the steel industry. And by this showing this positive business case. So in this case, we're making really a product. So a utilization case for outside of the steel industry, right? So you're not using the methanol in the steel industry, but we also looked at utilization options within the steel industry. So here it's you're combining utilization as a additional efficiency point in your steel plant. Even reducing further the amount of CO2 that you're emitting. So here it's not the utilization necessarily of the CO2, but the utilization of the hydrogen, so of the energy that is still in your gases. And in the C4U project, we tested multiple technologies, and one of them was the stepwise technology. And what we did is we demonstrated that we could use the decarbonized blast furnace gas as a fuel for the reheating furnaces. So really like an integrated approach of reducing your, of capturing your CO2 and reducing your overall need for energy in your steel plant. So these were still at TRL 6. So then it's time to make the step to TRL 7. So this is Initiate. This is an ongoing project next to the Greensmith project. So we have 2 running projects on this technology at the moment. So Initiate is the TRL 7 version of the project. So what you see here is the hoisting of another reactor, because I told you that the TRL 6 was a single reactor. With Initiate, we are going to multiple reactors, because to be able to produce CO2 and hydrogen continuously, you need multiple reactions, because you do need adsorption and desorption time in your columns. So it's a cyclic process. So that is what we are demonstrating currently at TRL 7. And in this project, we are also showing that industrial symbiosis actually can increase your business case even better. So in this case, we are looking at combining iron and steel industry with the ammonia and urea industry, which is also a carbon intensive industry. And especially the basic oxygen furnace gas in this case is really interesting, because there's the amount of nitrogen in this gas has the perfect ratio to combine with the hydrogen to make ammonia. So no additional cleanup steps are needed to make the ammonia. So that's a very interesting case from a business point of view. But here you see some of the let's say hoisting, etc. This is already work that is already now done. Currently, as we speak at this moment, we're doing the second campaign there. So we already did a campaign and we're now doing the second campaign. One of the things we're also doing within Initiate is already preparing for this next step. So for this TRL 8, because that's something that I want to give with you, that is although you still need to prove your technologies at TRL 6 or 7, or at whatever point you are in your development, really working on the next steps is very important. And one of the things we did is really look into the business case, and this is of the whole value chain. So of the carbon capture, the transport, and the storage, and the utilization as well. So we're looking, because you always produce more CO2 than you can utilize. So we're also taking into account storage. So what you see here, that the total costs are at this moment considered to be lower than the benefits that you get. So that would say there's a positive business case. The green bars are the uncertainties. So there's quite a lot of uncertainties, and that's really at this moment a very much bottleneck. What will be actually the let's say the benefits of the avoided ETS price of the avoided ECS? What will be the possibilities for a price premium, and how will the price of CO2 storage develop in the coming years? So that's our very large uncertainties that almost feel like they're outside of the scope of when you're developing a technology, but it's going to be very important for the implementation of any technology to keep showing this and working on it. So then I want to quickly say something about the Greensmith project. The Greensmith project is the current project that we're running under the CET partnership. And what we're doing here indeed is the combining two things. It was already mentioned. We are looking at a TRL 5 development, and that's a new application. So that's using this technology in combination with DRP, because so direct reduction, so a different way of steel making, as we never demonstrated it's a different way, everything is different. So we can't one-on-one say that the stepwise technology will work. And on the other hand, what we're doing is we're also still looking at the blast furnace BOF route, and together with one of the partners that is also currently the license holder of the technology, we are also looking at what the steps should be to a TRL 8, so a preparation to that. So quickly showing you the partners in the CET project, we have the full chain covered in the consortium. So we have the end user, so Asciere di Italia, who has a blast furnace BOF in the south of Italy, and Stegra in Sweden, who is building a DRP, so a direct reduction plant in Sweden. So both, so not just the value chain is covered, also both applications are covered. There's the technology suppliers involved, so Polworth, an EPC company known in the steel industry, and Kisuma, which is a Dutch company that makes the sorbent material that we use. So the material that actually does both the water gas shift reaction and captures the CO2. And the research organizations are TNO, and again Swerin, who is in previous projects, they are the host of the plant. So in this project, Greensmith, we are not doing measurements in Sweden, but they are still very much involved. They know the steel industry very well, and they know our technology well, so they perform the LCA in our in this project for us. So it's a good combination. And then with that comes further lessons up for scaling up, because now I focus my story a bit on, let's say, the technology steps and demonstrating steps, but there comes more to scaling up, and that's what I want to address in the last slide. And I want to say that everything I'm going to say, it sounds logical, but it's not easy, and we are still learning as well. So like I said, we are now very much trying to get the TRL 8 there, but it's very difficult. And not just because of the famous value of debt that is based on cash flow. There are other things that come in play as well. And I think some things are this, what I want to give to you is if you're a TRL 4-5, there's already things you can work on now. And that's what I want to give to you. The first thing is don't only focus on the technology development. It's been said in previous talks, so although I didn't know they were going to say it, so it's good that we are enhancing each other's storyline. Don't only focus on this technology development. Focus on your LCAs, focus on stakeholder engagement, very important. Also engage the value chain in your lower TRL technologies. And with engaging, I mean, don't just have them as partners or in an advisory board. Really think about what role are they going to play at your TRL 8-9 phase, and already try to get as much information out of them in early TRL phases, what you need to be ready for. Both for the transition, and for the transition, I'm meaning, like for instance, for CCS, you need to have the transport and the storage in line as well. So make sure that you know how this playing field works, but also for the technology, in our case, so TNO is as an applied research organization, we are not the parties that will actually make the sorbent material for a commercial sized plant. So think about who will make this material. You can make it maybe still at TRL 4, but already start including the companies that can make it for your TRL 5 and 6 campaign. Start thinking about valves that you need that are, for instance, so that you can buy in the future that are not just ready for research, but that, so all these things, start thinking about it, and you only will learn about these things if you start talking to EPCs, to end users, to suppliers of materials, and really involve them in the project.
Sa oled kontoris, saad rääkida?
Sorry, there is a microphone on.
Pani nüüd selle uue
One of the
hinna.
Yes. Thank you. We have to get, if you want to wrap up at this point.
Yeah, and this is the last slide. So just the last 2 points. So I'm really ready. So this is to find out what you need to reach your first of a kind. And the last one is think about your valorization strategy. So if you are considering a spin out or licensing, start thinking about that early on, because that's a long trajectory and you should have these partners involved already at this stage. Because that's very important to speed up. And with that, I'm concluding. So I am at the end of my talk.
Thank you very, very much. Extremely valuable information. We are getting a lot of applause for you. And this is actually, I think we should probably go directly to Kimmo's presentation at this point and then begin the dialogue after that, so that we are saving a little bit of time. So I guess we will do that, but definitely we all took so much from this presentation. So extremely important. Thank you so much. And we'll get back to it after Kimmo's presentation. And Kimmo, go ahead, please. Oh, I will show your slides.
Yes, yes, please. Yes,
sorry,
please.
Just a moment. You can start already, and I will start sharing from here.
First of all,
we have green.
Indeed, thank you, Tanya, and thank you, CETP. Thank you, Eik, for a very interesting presentation. It is actually very close to my heart, at least, close to the things that I am presenting and what we are doing in SSAB, not only in terms of the technologies, not only in terms of the topics, but also physically, because our plant, one of our plants, or actually two of our plants, are very close to Stegra plant up north, as you may know, in the city, close to the city of Luleå. My name is Kimmo Järvinen. I work in Brussels for SSAB, Swedish steel producer. We have steel production plants in Sweden, in Finland, and in the US. And SSAB, Swedish Steel, SSAB has been around for 140 years already. So we think that we know what it is to produce steel, and we are facing all of the same, basically all of the same basic challenges as also Eik's partners, Stegra and the Italians and so forth. I was planning to take you through the journey of SSAB towards the fossil-free steel production technology. I think there is a similarity to what Eik was presenting, in that the outcome or the target is basically the same, is to able to produce steel without CO2 emissions. And of course, as Jean-Luc was already nicely presenting, the steel industry is a big emitter of greenhouse gases and CO2 emissions. So clearly there is a societal need, there is an environmental need, and also there is a technological challenge or technical challenge in being able to reduce the emissions. And the more the better, of course. And what I will be presenting you is a different approach than Eik did, because in our case, we are trying to do the cut off of CO2 emissions from the very first stage of the production, which is the reduction of iron ore. as in X presentation, it was presented as a blast furnace technology. Indeed, blast furnace technology is the old-fashioned, highly emitting technology. Our journey started already more than 10 years ago. I was at that time already in Brussels with our CEO, present at that time CEO Martin Lindqvist in 2016, presenting and telling the steel community and also the policymakers that SSAB has decided to cut off basically all of the CO2 emissions by using a hydrogen-based reduction technology. And since then, we started to develop the technology together with our partners, LKAB, who is an iron ore mining company. So they are the ones who supply us with the iron ore, which is needed for the steel production, and then Vattenfall, which is the electricity provider. And you may know that the electricity demand of fossil-free steel production is very huge. It's huge. It's not just big, it's huge. So typically our plants would be using like 2-3 terawatt hours of electricity for producing 2.5 million tons of steel. So this all started with the cooperation with the electricity producer and the iron ore mine, and of course Vattenfall. Obviously, there were a lot of research partners and also national funding organizations. EU funding, Innovation Fund was of course one of our funding organization, funding sources. So it's not only these companies, but these 3 companies, they formed a research company, specialized research company called Hybrid. And the hybrid is kind of the core of the whole story that I will be presenting to you today. The motivation, the primary motivation, as said, was to cut down the CO2 emissions. And you know that the EU emission trading system puts a price for the emissions. And of course, we were already at that time thinking that, and we were seeing the forecast which said that the emission allowance price will go over 100 euro per ton of CO2, and we calculated at that time already that with the old technology, old-fashioned technology, if there is no way to reduce the emissions, it will not be competitive in roughly 10 years or so to produce steel anymore. So there was a clear political guidance in that sense from the EU, and the guidance was clearly had a name, and the name was Emission Trading System, ETS. So what we started doing, we started to do the research work together with our partners and financed by the financing institutions in a laboratory scale, and we took along the sort of already existing knowledge about the direct reduction of iron ore via hydrogen, replacing the coking coal, which is the old-fashioned, or which is still a prevailing technology actually, but at that time it was basically the only solution that was available for commercial steel production. So we started to do the experiments, and then this was 2016, 17, and 2020. We started our pilot plant, which was not really anymore it was fairly sizable pilot, but it was a pilot in terms of a steel production plant. And in that pilot plant, we were using hydrogen produced via hydrogen electrolyzer, and use that hydrogen to reduce the iron ore to the pure iron. And of course, this was placed next to our steel mill, existing steel mill, brownfield steel mill, which had been existing there for over 100 years, and where we had 2 blast furnaces. So we were able quite nicely to combine this steel that we were getting out 2021 out from our pilot plant. We were able to use it and sort of re-roll and manufacture or process it further to our customers. And now comes a very important learning that already Eik presented, and the learning is that you have to have your partners, not only your technological partners like LKAB, Vattenfall, but you have to have your customers also with you when you are trying to implement such a big scale transformation. And we had Volvo and some others already at that time interested in our new steel, fossil-free steel, and we were supplying them 2022 already 500 tons of our fossil-free steel for experimental use. This was not a commercial and trade instruction. It was simply a pilot phase supply for testing whether this new kind of steel, fossil-free steel, is able to do what the old-fashioned carbon steel is doing. But the important learning was, and I think this is one of the reasons why we have been able to move forward, was that we had our customers on board on a very, very early stage. Naturally, we were doing all the time research with universities, Oulu University in Finland up north, and other universities in developing the products. So when you are transforming, when you are changing the process, you need to also always make sure that the new products from the new process are equivalent, are the same or even better than the old-fashioned products. And that's what we were also doing all the time. I've been involved in these research projects in 2015, and the research continues, so it hasn't stopped. But I said, most important learning was that you have to have your customers, and then you have to supply them with the pilot shipments, and then you can test your product whether it works or not. We can move to Tanya to the next one, because it's the continuation of the story. The continuation of the story is that based on the positive experiences that we had from our pilot scale shipments, from our customers, we decided that we start to transform our plants one by one into the low emission steel production or fossil-free steel production, depending on how you want to call it. By the way, Jean-Luc was very right in saying that the definition is absolutely necessary and important, and we don't have a clear definition for the low carbon or low emission steel yet existing, and that is really something that we are wishing for. We are working together with the institutions and hoping for, and all of the steel producers within Europe and all over the world, they are interested to develop sort of a common, understandable and applicable sort of a working definition for low emission steel. Okay, back to the story, back to the journey. We decided to start our full-scale transformation process from our Oxelösund electric arc furnace mill, because in Oxelösund we have the oldest blast furnace technology used. It is not as big as the Luleå and Raahe mills, but it was big enough to be a full-scale plant because it is producing 1.5 million tons of steel, or was producing at that time, and it was an urgent need to be renovated and transformed. And what we decided is that we will stop using the blast furnace, and we will instead invest in the electric arc furnace, because of the fact that to process the DRI, hydrogen reduced iron, you will need, or you will normally use electric arc furnace, and you can use electric arc furnace because electric arc furnace is much more less polluting than the blast furnaces. It basically is an electrified melting oven for the iron ore. And it is an existing technology. There is not much of an invention there, but in the inventive thing, of course, in our case, the innovation was in that we wanted to produce the DRI with our hybrid technology, and then we wanted to use it for steel production, and to be less polluting or basically low emission, you need to do it with electric arc furnace.
Kimmo, 2 minutes.
Yes.
2
Okay.
minutes. Yeah.
I will be short because the story is very simple from now on, from this onwards. So now this Oxelösund mill will start next year, early next year. It is basically ready. The construction has been finished. It was a substantial investment, but as I said, we are almost there. We are almost also at the same time we are investing and we are constructing a bigger fossil-free steel mill in Luleå, in the city of Luleå, next to the Stegra, and there the production will be 2.5 million tons. And there we will be doing also some more adaptations or transformation processes than just changing the blast furnaces into electric arc furnaces. The name mini mill is not really very descriptive because it's not a mini mill, it's a full-size 2.5 million ton steel mill, but the name comes from the fact that the concept involves also re-rolling and annealing and some other processing in addition to having 2 electric arc furnaces. And then when this has been progressing far enough, we will do the same in Finland, in Rahe, which is another 2.5 million ton decarbonized steel. So we will also transform the Rahe mill into the two Rahe mill blast furnaces into 2 electric arc furnaces. So this is the story. So we are leading the transformation. For us, absolutely important it is that the whole environmental ambition that EU has will be maintained. We will not divert from the course because the whole thing is partly based on the fact that we have emission trading system and we have certain costs related to the emissions. Of course, throughout the journey, we have learned that many of our customers, we have more than 60 agreements already for our fossil-free steel. Many of our customers want this kind of steel, and it is to us it is quite high in demand. And I think that the best proof of the high demand is that we have Stegra in Sweden doing the same in Finland. We have another one in France. We have another one in Spain. We have yet another steel producer who is planning to do the same as we are doing. Tanya, I stop here. I thank you for having the opportunity to tell you about SSAB. We are very proud of doing what we do, and we need definitely cooperation, specifically from the political side.
Thank you very, very much. Excellent presentations, both of you. Now we will eat a little bit into our break, just a couple of minutes to have a couple of questions from each other to each other. So maybe, Kimmo, if you have something that you would like to ask Soledad about their technology, which seems very, I mean, they are working with an Italian steel company. So I'm thinking as we saw. So is there something that you would like to ask her about her presentation or her innovation or her, stakeholder engagement or whatever comes to your mind from a point of view of a company that might one day use their innovation?
Yeah, the burning question, Eik, from my side would be to know which political incentives, which part of the regulation motivated you to do this? Because for us, it was really in a great deal based on the fact that we have emission trading system. But did you have something in your mind when you were starting to do the development?
Yeah. Yes, so as TNO, so it's also good, I put it in the chat, but it's so in the CETP project, we're not working with SSAB, but the pilot I showed, that's located at Zweden, and we are using actually the steel gases from the SSAB plant next to it. So you are a partner in the stepwise and initiate project. So I didn't mention that because it was a CETP meeting. But yeah, so indeed, so the driver is the greenhouse gas emissions, and indeed so that's the driver that we're working on this, and that's also why we're now looking not only at blast furnace and BOF gases, but also at, let's say, direct reduction, both with natural gas as with hydrogen. As you know it well, it's the steel always needs carbon to be made steel, and you always have a surplus. So real negative emissions, CCS will benefit. So that's the driver to work on it. Yeah. And then next to that, another very important driver is that in Europe, we see that we are pushing more on really the ETS price, and it's working. In the end, we're getting our steel in Europe from all over the world. So having a technology that is also, well, cost efficient to capture CO2, and with that, reduce maybe global emissions, that's in the back of the mind, of course. What's in the back of our minds.
Yeah. May I, Tanya?
Yes,
because
quickly.
I have another. Because for us, we have seen a lot of interest. We have seen a lot of interest from abroad also to our technology, and I suppose you have the same, that Indians and Chinese and others are asking for what you are doing, and maybe even trying to copy or something like that.
Copying, and probably yes. I'm not aware of that, but yes, it's the steel industry is really an international market, and for indeed also outside of Europe there's interest.
I saw CCS already 10 years ago in close to Dubai in Arab Emirates, but at that time it was not very effective yet. They were using the CO2 to pump it to the drilling holes. But
yeah, that is also why with the Greensmith project, so we are still carbon capture. So the capture part is a very important part still of if you really want to go to zero emissions. But what we're looking at the Greensmith project, and I addressed it a little bit less, is that the steel gases itself contain a lot of energy, and our idea is also to use, for instance, recycling of the top gas. So it gets very technical, but at least to reduce the amount of energy input that you have to put in yours. So make it also about energy efficiency and really use the hydrogen. So the energy content that comes from your steel gases to also fuel your either DRI or your blast furnace. Yeah. So indeed, the utilization of the energy within your steel factory. So you can call it efficiency. You can call it carbon capture, because we will remain a pure CO2 stream that you can store, right? Yeah. But it's also there talking about, making it better integrated.
Indeed. I stop here, Tanya.
Yes, thank you. We can continue. We will have an opportunity to continue in the end when we have the interactive part and everybody will be answering the Menti questions. Then we will have an opportunity to have a dialogue of about 20-25 minutes. So definitely let's pick up at that point. Right now we will have a break. Thank you very much, all of the speakers at this point, and the audience for a really active dialogue also on the chat. So let's have a break and let's get back at 1:45. So now I believe we have about 6 minutes. So go ahead, have a bio break, get some coffee, and we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. Let's see if we have our next speakers present. So I welcome to the stage Neeltje Ramnat.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi, and Liselotte.
Good afternoon.
Liselotte Ulfgård. Hi. At this point, you can both turn your videos on so we see who we are, who we have here today in this session. I unfortunately can't see you for some reason. Maybe you are over there. There you are.
Yeah, found me?
Yes.
Good.
There. For some reason, usually the speakers come to the first group of heads. At the moment, it's not the case, but you are there. So welcome. This final round we have here today is going to be about the commercialization and funding journey. So we have heard about the early stage stakeholder engagement. We have heard about the setting up the markets with Bilge and Jean-Luc. We have heard about the kind of pilot and FOAC phases and going that way and what that entails. And now we are looking at the final stage commercialization and funding, or actually maybe these two go hand in hand. So Liselotte represents the Next Gen project from CETPartnership, and that is one of the few projects maybe that is run by a company. So she is also representing a startup called Hagnesia. It's a deep tech startup. She is going to give us her perspective on the discussions and work she is doing, trying to get the technology off the ground, working with investors, and the technology is related to a new kind of lightweight generator that can be used in wind energy and in other types of energy production. And with her here, we have Neeltje Ramnat from the Catalyze Group. We have worked with Neeltje before. She provides innovation support from public funding to private finance, and Catalyze Group also does investment by itself. So welcome very much to both of you, and let's give Liselotte now the floor.
Thank you, Tanya. Then I will share my screen. That is fine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Excellent.
So thank you for inviting me. I was invited to talk a little bit about Hagnesia's journey and the transition between technology development and commercialization. And I want to start off by saying that I would say that we are no way in a position of giving the truths or the answers or the facet for this, because this is a process that we are in the middle of ourselves. And perhaps also to separate a bit or to contrast a bit to the previous speaks, which was really interesting and to some extent have come further than us because it's actually on higher tier level and more closer to industrial level. What we do is to try to build a new company or a new technology, doing more or less the startup journey, working with what we call deep tech startup and how to develop and commercialize that. So that's sort of the perspective that I will give into this. So my name is Liselotte. I am the CTO of Hagnesia AB and also the CEO of this subsidiary Hagnesia Wind AB, which is actually why I'm invited here, because we have the Next Gen project, which is a CETP funded project. And as you can tell from my double titles, we're a relatively small company. We're only 12 people, where there is room for people to wear more than one hat, which is also part of the one of the interesting things with working with smaller startups and being part of that journey. So while I'm the CTO, I have a strong background in renewable power generation. I worked a lot with technology. I would say compared to my team, I'm more or less a technical generalist. I help steer the R&D and technology development, trying to push R&D and technology development towards product development and commercialization, where I basically stand on the shoulders of my great team of engineers and experts who's sort of making this happen. Which will bring me up to my first slide, which is basically what it is that what we do. So Hagnesia is a Swedish startup company developing a novel direct drive generator. It could also be a motor. A motor and a generator is basically the same thing. It just spins in different directions. But our strongest case for this electrical machine, as it is wind power. It's actually developed for all applications that are characterized by low speed and high torque, and wind power is the extreme case of this. So wind power is our best case. What's interesting about this technology that it's actually it's basically built with the same materials as any conventional machines. It uses the magnets and the copper and the electrical steel that you would expect in any permanent magnet generator, but by arranging them in a different way, making another electromagnetic topology of it, we managed to make it very much more competitive, specifically for low speeds applications, where we, for megawatt-sized machines, will be able to save up to 90% of the materials used, both active materials like the magnets and the rare earth elements that comes with them, and also structural materials and stuff, making it then fit for direct drive applications, so you don't require a gearbox, while at the same time retaining the same or even higher efficiency. So the talk will not be about the technology itself, but I really want to emphasize this, that it's not enough to have the solution. It's not enough to have the potential. You also need to be able to communicate it and build trust around it, especially when you're a deep tech startup at low TRL levels, where you also need to show and have a plan for how you're going to scale it up, how you're going to validate it when you build a lot on promises and your own understanding and knowledge of it, but you need to be able to communicate that, especially if you want to attract funding and stakeholders to sort of tag along on the journey to realize it. So that has been one important realization for us, to understand that it's not enough to have the solution. It's not enough to be able to explain it into the smallest little detail. You need to be able to communicate it. You need to be able to bridge trust, basically. Which brings us to the slide here, which shows a bit on where we are. Right now we are at TRL level 4 to 5. So what we basically have, we have the theory and we have the models, and we actually spend a lot of time and effort in building the capacity of building prototypes, small scale prototypes, which is a decision we took early on, simply because we realized that we will need to build these machines to prove that this will work, because otherwise it will just be deemed as too good to be true. And the Next Gen project, which is a CETP funded project, has been one of our absolutely most important projects in doing this. So this is targeted towards wind, and it's a project where we both get to build the design and also to build the capability to manufacture these machines and to build a larger scale design which could be fit for wind power applications. And we also team up with experts in their fields, Fraunhofer, which is really good at testing and validation. They have this big nacelle test bench in Fraunhofer, which we'll use in Germany, and also DTU, who are the experts in wind power. So that's really a tip or a lesson learned, or not a lesson learned, a recommendation. Team up, choose your partner wisely, because they open a lot of doors and add so much values to a project like this, and also to build credibility to your technology when you yourself are basically unknown. Like 1 year before we had the CETP project, we didn't even have a homepage because we wanted to stay under the radar. No one had heard of us, and that's how we wanted it to be, because we wanted to build a patent portfolio. We wanted to show the prototypes, have everything done. And now we sort of have reached that point. We can build the prototypes. Now we want to scale up, and then you need to also be able to show how you are going to do it. So the Next Gen project will take us to TRL 5. And as you can see from this map, this project is sort of part of a bigger picture where we want to commercialize this technology for a few different applications. As I said, it's high torque, low speed. It could be wind power. Wind power is our strongest case. It could also be marine propulsion. It could also be ocean energy. It could also be a lot of different sorts of industrial machines. I think one of the main challenges with wind power is that it's very big machines. It's like 5, 10, 15, 20 megawatt machines. So it will be a long journey. And that's something that you should be aware of when you plan commercialization. What are the applications? If it's only one, that's nice, easy and manageable. If there are several, you need to understand what the roadmap will look like. How much time will it actually take to scale up? Who are the customers? And to have a clear path for that. What is it that we need to plan? For us, it has had a lot of synergy effects having different applications, because so far at these low TRL levels, they have a lot in common. So it's basically the same team working with all applications, and it's more or less the same machines and testing and everything like that. But the further down we come the line with increasing the TRL levels, it will also be more niched, because each product has its own requirements, has its own customers, has its own path for how much time and basically what it will cost to commercialize. So you need to sort of navigate that. And as several people have told before, I can only agree that the TRL levels are great to make a simple picture, a simple linear picture how you are climbing the TRL level. You can also use all the other readiness levels, customer readiness, team readiness, whatever you call them. They are all great, but you need to have in mind that it's not a linear path. It doesn't really take into account the fact that you need to go back and change the technology when you upscale, or that you need to change the technology because you integrate it into an nacelle or a drivetrain. So it is a really good map to follow, but be aware and make sure to communicate this in a good way, in a proactive way, when you talk to your stakeholders, because otherwise it's easy to make it sound too simple, and it's also easy to make it sound really complex and risky and a lot of unknowns and unknowns. So this is a bit of an art that we are still working on. So I would say for us, it's really been a realization how important it is to build trust. And I would say compared to these other projects that we had previously, the Green Smith and the Green Steel, where you have both everything from like the technology developer to the end user to the TSOs and DSO and regulators, super complex stakeholder environment. Our one is very simple, I would say. It is us. We're building a new technology. Hopefully it will be a drop-in replacement to a customer, which would be the OEM, which is using it. So I would say we have a relatively simple case in doing this journey. But anyway, you cannot emphasize enough how important it is to communicate clearly and to communicate early on. When you want to build that bridge to the next steps. As I said, we are in TRL 5 soon, and now we need to plan for doing TRL 6 and 7, which means that we want to be able to integrate our generator into a wind turbine, for example, which becomes much more complex. You need to have the OEM on board. You need to have the wind turbine owner on board. It's a much more expensive project than that we can fund ourselves. So in bridging this gap, there are a lot of things to sort of have in mind. We want to go from we have the strong concept, we have the prototypes, we have the promising performance, but it's still at low scale. It's a lot of uncertainties. What the customers and also the investors and everyone wants to see is sort of full scale validation. They want to see system integrated solutions. They want to see operational track records. That's when they sort of will open their wallet and say that, hey, this might actually work. This we can buy. So in bridging this sort of gap with your stakeholders, there are a lot of things that you need to keep in mind, which, as I said, we're really, really in the middle of. So I'm not the right person to give some lessons, just some reflections and experience that we had, that it's a balance of sort of both saying, yes, we can, full steam ahead. Now we did TRL 4, let's do TRL 5, TRL 6, straight line, full steam ahead, while sort of managing the risk, knowing that there will be setbacks, knowing that it's not technologically challenges, there are also organizational challenges, economic challenges. If you're a startup, for example, just liquidity is a challenge. So there are a lot of risks and challenges, and knowing how you communicate this and finding the right partners where you feel confident in communicating this, whether if it's partners or if it's funders or if it's customer, is really, really important, because the customers and the investors, they want to feel that that we are confident and that they can be confident. So you cannot say that there are no risks. You need to be sort of open about that, but it cannot be too many risks. So you need to manage that. And in a place where you sort of have the technology, you have the theory, you can explain it, but you cannot show it. It's also you want to sort of explain it. on a deeper level, but you cannot always do that because then you have IP, which is super important if you want to sort of be able to commercialize this the full way. No one will want to invest in something if you don't have the IP and if you cannot protect it. So there's a lot of balances here, which we are balancing. It's not an easy question, but to me, I would say that building trust is the most important thing, and that's not always just working on the technology. It's working a lot with communication, stakeholder engagement, understanding the other side's perspective, understanding the customer's perspective, and also the investors, I guess, and interacting. So I would say trying to come to some sort of my conclusions on key lessons learned. I could make a list with 10 bullets, but I reduced it to just 2. The first lesson would be that validation builds trust. You need to be sort of clear what is proven and what is not proven. And for everything that is not proven or is a risk, you need to have sort of a plan. When will you validate it? You will not be able to validate everything at TRL 4 or 5. You won't have the time, you won't have the money, you won't have the resources, but you need to have a plan for when you will do it, and to be sort of transparent about that. And it's not always enough that you can prove it. You need to perhaps have third party to prove it, which is why I really encourage having these collaborations as we did. At an early stage, we didn't dare to have collaborations with potential customers or potential competitors, which they might be. So we chose to do it with a well-known university and a research institute, which has opened a lot of doors for us, and also helped improve the project a lot. So that's a thing to consider. Choose your partners wisely, and also engage customers as far as you can. Because strong partners really strengthens the credibility. And the other part is to do talk to customers early on. There are 1,000 reasons why one would not want to talk to customers early on. So we have been on this journey ourselves, and we have been really reluctant to talk to customers because in our case, if you look at sort of Siemens or Vestas, who would be our customers and end user, they are both our customers, potentially. They are also our competitors because they build these themselves or in close collaboration with those who do that. So you really want to have your IP in place. So for that reasons, there are reasons to wait. It could also be that you don't feel like you know it enough. We know the machine, we don't know wind power. So you want to have all the pieces in place and have the whole story and have the whole explanation before you start approaching your customers. But as far as you can, do talk to customers. The earlier, the better, because they will reveal actual concerns, actual constraints. They will present opportunities. You will need them for later TRL levels. If you are to integrate it and test it in a system, you will need them later on. And the earlier you talk to them, the easier it will be to find those stepping stones and to find the actual problems and to risk mitigate. And they are also key to attracting funding. You cannot go to, you can, but for us, it's been really tricky to go to investors say that we have the best idea in the world, but we don't dare to talk to the customers because of this and that reason. You sort of need to basically show that you have customer traction to get funding or to have an interest from VC capital and things like that. And on a more personal note, I also experienced that it's easier to talk to customers if you come at an early stage and ask questions and you are curious and you want to learn. Because if you come later on and try to do a sales pitch and you say that you have all the answers, they will treat you in that way. But if you find the right partner to talk to and you make them a bit curious and they realize that these guys are learning, we can steer them in a direction that will make this a better system solution. You can have really good collaboration with them. So I think that has been one of my biggest lessons, how important it is to sort of build trust, and that it is challenging to balance this journey, especially as a small startup. For us, we wanted to do this journey. We wanted to build this ourselves. In the end, we want to build these generators and motors ourselves, building a new industry. You could, of course, just license it and sell it as an idea earlier on. To have someone else commercialize it. But if you want to do it on your own, there's a lot of things to have in mind. So I think that's more or less what I wanted to say. So I would be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you very much. We have to move on. Thank you very much, Liselotte. This was extremely important, and I can hear that from every presentation we have actually heard now the word trust. and we have heard the word customer, that both of these things you have to figure out and engage and address early on. But now, before we move on to Neeltje, she's an investor, and now it's an opportunity for you to ask anything you want from Neeltje. We can do this later on as well, but this is a good point. If there is something you would like to get her perspective on, you have spoken to many investors already, but is there something that you are thinking that Neeltje might be able to comment on right now?
I would say I'm curious to hear how you sort of how deep you go in the technology and how you deem risk, or if it's basically just a question of deeming how the company itself deems risk, because this is something we are playing with. How much of the risk, how much of the uncertainties do you want to talk about and play out, and how much should you keep it to yourself, and just finding that right balance. I would be curious to hear more about, because I've also heard, as I think someone before mentioned also, that you invest in the team, not necessarily the technology, but at some end it is technology that will be commercialized. So I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay, Tanja, do you want me to respond now or go into that in the presentation? Yes?
It would be good to hear.
Yeah. So it's a very good question, Liesbeth, and really nice presentation that you gave. What we see indeed is that it's the total package we look at, but like you receive so many applications, so something really needs to stand out. If you look at our pipeline with our fund, it's enormous. So there needs to be something that really, like gets your attention before you even have a meeting. And what I also see, I think it also depends on what kind of investor you're talking to. Is it an investor that already wants you to have revenues, because there are many nowadays, or is it really an investor that already wants to start early? Because there also the risk profile matters. So we are an early investor, so we do pre-seed, seed, for example, Series A. So maybe we take more risk than maybe somebody else that already wants to see revenues in your company. And furthermore, we look at the total package. What we find very important is the team. The trust thing is very important, because you want to have a conversation and you must have the feeling that, like the team at the other side of the table is going to make the difference, that they are the people that can actually make it happen. So yes, you have risks, you have your mitigation strategy, but we must believe that you are the people that can actually, like do this and execute the plan that you have on board. So that's a very important one. And we also really look very strongly at, like the sales forecast, your route to market. How are you planning to scale up? So it's nice that you have a technology now, but did you already look further into, okay, when everything works out and everything is, like on point, what is your plan to then really deliver it to the market? And what is your strategy there? And how are you going to scale up? And what kind of risks do you see there? Do you have the whole thing planned out? And the more mature you are in your full plan, the bigger the chance is that there is an interest. So I don't know if that helps.
It helps, but it really requires that you, as you said, it's not only TRL then, it's sort of having the whole plan before you even have the technology in place.
Yes, and the technology that you are really beyond the state of the art is a very important thing, but also then how do you protect it and how do you really plan to make the next steps? And then, the trust thing is important. Like, are you the person that is going to make this happen? Do we believe that you have the right network and the right stakeholders in your team to really do this? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah? Now let's move on to Neeltje, your presentation, and continue the discussion after that.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my presentation. Okay, screen. Do you see my screen now?
We do. It's not yet in presentation mode, but we do see the slide set.
Yeah?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you all. And thanks, Tanja, for the invitation. So I'm talking here in the name of Catalyze Group. My name is Neeltje Ramnat. I'm the business unit director of the departments about deep tech and sustainability. And I have a couple of slides to just give you an insight in what we do before we get into the business at hand. Let me see. So first, catalyze. What is important? We are a consulting company and we are headquartered in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And our driver, it's very important, we believe in that the most meaningful innovations deserve the best chance to succeed. And that is the driver with which we do everything. So all the services that you see come by in a minute, this is really the driver for which we do things. And what we see is that not always the best innovations really make it to the market or the best ideas, because there are a lot of more factors that are important to make sure that you actually get there, right? So we are there to also help to get those great innovations also actually to market, so that they don't, like quit or strand or anything before they actually get there. So who are we then? So we are now a consulting company of approximately 110 people. This is a picture of our team last year. And in the past 20 years, we have helped very innovative companies, so startups, scale-ups, multinationals, but also PIs in more academic setting with bringing funding on board. And you have to think about public funding as well as private funding that we do. So what do we do then? So we have a couple of services. I'm sorry, my Teams was getting away. So the first one is fund. So we really want to help innovators to get funding. So think about all kinds of different grants. So we work in the whole of Europe. It means we work with European grants, but also with national grants from the different countries. And the only thing that makes a difference is in some countries, for example, in France, you have to maybe write your grant applications in French. Whenever we have a consultant that is French speaking, we can do it. Whenever not, then we can't. But we do know what are all the different funding options in Europe and nationally. So that is one. Furthermore, also strategy, because along your funding journey that starts with grants when you're very early in your TRL, there are certain moments that you really need a strategy. Think about your business case. You need to develop market research to find out which are the application areas that I need to focus on. You have to maybe do a strong competitor analysis, or you need to develop a business plan or slide deck, or get your investor readiness documentation, etc. That's what we do with our strategy department. Furthermore, we have a department really focusing on the management tasks. So super nice, you win a grant and then the work happens. You're maybe in a consortium of 5 to 10 partners for maybe 3 to 5 years. And then you have to manage the whole thing as a main applicant. It takes a lot of time. So that's also something that we do. So for all the big consortia grants, think about the big horizons, the Eurostars proposals, or even set partnerships, we can manage all those projects that you have running around. And last thing is invest. Also what Tanja mentioned, we have our own fund with which we invest in the innovations that we see through our pipeline. Pre-seed, seed and Series A, that's a little bit our sweet spot. And we fund in actually all the sectors that we're active in, which will be the next slide. So 3 key industries. One is life sciences and health innovations. We started with life science and health 20 years ago. Since 2019, we are also focusing on green and sustainable innovations. That was also the time, I think, a year later that the Green Deal happened in Europe. And now since a couple of years, we're also focusing on the, I would say, die-hard deep tech, which then includes quantum, photonics, but also defense, dual use, space, etc., etc. So this is what we have done until now. Over 20 years of experience in our innovation ecosystem. There are over 5,000 partners. We're active in more than 20 countries, currently more than 100 experts. And when you look at our management portfolio, it's more than 300 million. And the funding raised for our clients in the past years is over 2 billion. So that's where we stand now. It's Catalyze. So how do we then help innovators to get funding and make impact? Because that's also important. So when you look at the 9 funding challenges that we see that our clients face, because we help our clients from TRL 1 up to TRL 8, 9, that's also the room that they have, also for grant applications and where we bring in funding with our fund as well. So one is success really requires a deep understanding of the complex and large funding landscape. There are so many European programs and so many national programs. Before you know, you are focusing as a startup for a grant call that you just saw come by and you think, oh, this is perfect for us. This is exactly what we do. You put a lot of time and resource in it. Then you submit a proposal and you don't win. Why? Because this program had a success rate of 5%. It was a perfect fit, but the success rate was 5%. While there may have been other programs with not per se a perfect fit from the start on, but with a chance to win of 80%. So you have to really choose like what are the things that we're going to focus on. So that is one. Second, insight into key priorities of many funding agencies and governments are vital. So there's the plan on paper, what they want to see. And the eligibility criteria, but they might be different how they actually are going to choose the winners. And this differs per funding agency, this differs per program. Also very important one. 3, the competition is high with many researchers and companies applying for the same funds. We always have the usual suspects. For companies, this is the EIC Accelerator and the Eurostars, for example, for lower TRL programs. And when you have consortia, things like CETPartnership, for example. But also, like with AI coming up, the competition gets higher and higher because the dots on the I are going to make the difference whether you win or not. Fourth, only world-class scientific excellence is rewarded. Also very important one. You always have to be beyond the state of the art and also reviewing your proposals. They will actually challenge that. Building solid international consortia is also very challenging. How do you make sure that you get the right people on board for your project and the key opinion leaders in a specific field? That a strong consortium is 50% of the win. So it's super important that you have that covered. 6, the development plans must be compliant with regulatory requirements. Always the case. 7, applications may need to include sound patent strategies. They always want to see how have you protected everything. 8, various expertise is required for a strong commercial strategy. These are all often annexes that you have to submit to your application, but super important. Your competitor analysis, market insights for life science and health, your medical technology assessment, pricing and reimbursement strategies, that all needs to be there. And 9, the application should be handled and processed according to the stringent EU guidelines and requirements, of course, in case of a European program. Yeah, so these are the main funding challenges that we see. So how can you finance your innovation? When we look at the financing of a startup from our perspective, what we have seen in the past years, basic research and, like the early start, there are a lot of grants, research grant, development grants. So in the beginning, you see that there's more money coming in than getting out. And at a certain point, you see it starts declining. And then you have your proof of concept ready. You start with founders, friends, and family for the additional money to come in. When you have working prototypes, angel investors need to come in early stage venture capital, when you have engineering prototypes, and so on and so on. And you see that the line is declining. And this is called the valley of death until the moment that you start making revenues. And you see more money and more money is needed. And the further you come to the line, the more difficult it is to get funding, right? You have to compete over with a lot of companies for the same funds. So where does the money come from then? So this is just a screenshot of the subsidy landscape within our field. This is just a couple of them. You see the European Innovation Council, for example. The NIH that does a couple of things for life science and health companies also in Europe. The CBEJU, which we see a lot. CETPartnership, ET Health. So many programs that are here, but there are more, of course. And just as an example, when you look at the TRL from 1 to 8, like how can you be funded in which stage of development? Here I have an example of the combination of Europe and the Netherlands, but we have versions for every country, of course. And then you see it when you're early TRL, you have EIC Pathfinder, you have maybe EIC POC still in academic setting, you have a lot of academics grants that can help you, some Dutch programs that can help you, and at a certain point you need to look at local or national investment, government investment agencies, for example, some R&D programs that can really help you get from tier level 4 to tier level 6. And at a certain point, you also see your seed investment, your series A, B, and C going through this line. So I'm not going to name everything because that doesn't not per se make sense for now. But I hope this gives you a nice idea, like how can your innovation be funded throughout your technology development timeline. So are you ready? Next thing. So when you look at investment and innovation readiness, at Catalyze, we look at 4 different things. So first one is the company and innovation. We really look at the team and the network. We look at the innovation and we look at how you have protected it. All very important. Then we also look at the business case. Is there really a market opportunity and how big is this market opportunity? And is there really a need from this market? Do you also have proof that there is an interest? The value proposition you have and also the competition that you see. And the competition is not only the competition with your product, but really in the need from your customer that you solve, right? It can be that from different routes, there can be solutions to the problem that your customer faces. So you don't only look at direct competition, but also at indirect competition. That's a very important one. You need to have your competition clear before you have discussions. The company strategy. Is there a development plan, your business model, your commercial strategy, and you need to have your commercial strategy also further ahead. Like I just also said to Lieselot, like you need to have your full plan ready also. How are you going to scale up? What is your plan for that? And the last one, the financial strategy. What is your funding strategy? How are you planning to get funded? What is the mix of public and private funding that you're planning to have? How are you funded until now? What do you already have like verbal agreements for and what is really standing out? Is there exit potential and what are your financial forecasts? These are the most important things that we look at. Then some tips on team and innovation. Do you really have a winning team? So really check with yourself, like, do I have the right people in my team? Also for commercial success, not only lab results. And if you have a gap, make sure that you fill that gap before you go into discussions with, because everybody knows this, also VCs know this, also with grant applications, if you don't have the right people in your team, they will see that and they will be less trusty in the fact that you will make it in the end. So make sure that you look at that. Do I have everything in place? Also, you need, of course, your clear and convincing data. Are your data really convincing? And are you also presenting this in the right way? Is your product really relevant? And what does your proof of concept mean in the real world? The market, commercial space, etc. Yeah. And then it's all about the market adoption. So adoption, also what Lieselot said, present your end user, your consumer, go-to-market strategy. Have you spoken to key opinion leaders, end users for real target market data? And present true data, because then you show you're knowledgeable, know where your gaps are, know where the risk lies, and show that you have a mitigation strategy for those risks, that you really know your place in the market, what you're facing, what your challenges are. Be truthful about it, because then they believe that you know what you're doing. And the last one, clear commercial strategy. Many are unclear about their commercial strategy and focus, commercial team and plans for upscaling. This is what we have encountered in the past. So make sure you have a really realistic go-to-market strategy. Know what investments are required to achieve commercial success, because we have seen many, many failures. So we're getting more critical anytime. So this was it. So I hope this was valuable.
Thank you.
I don't know if there
Absolutely.
are questions. Yeah?
Thank you.
Good to hear.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you very much. We are quite well on time. I think at this point, if I'll ask one question from you now, and then we can, as I said, continue the dialogue a few minutes later. Actually, I could ask this from Lieselot also, if you have an opinion. what do startups often misunderstand about investors, and maybe vice versa? What are the biggest or most usual misunderstandings?
Yeah. What I see very often, because we have at Catalyze we have different departments. So we are a group. That means different people are responsible for different. So our investment part is a separate one. So I often discuss potential candidates with our investment team to further validate, like, does this make sense, yes or no? And what I see is that many companies think, okay, let's just have a meeting and let's just discuss. But before getting a meeting, at least at our fund, a lot of the information goes through email because they have only minimal time, right? So you have to make sure that on email and on paper, everything is super strong to really get yourself at the table. Because before there is at least email communication of 5 to 10 times before we actually have a meeting to look deeper into that. And then sometimes I see it often, companies think like, okay, let's just give some insights and the rest we will discuss in the meeting, but you have to get this meeting first.
Yep.
So make sure that you really are on top of your things and address every question that you receive also strong. And if you don't feel that you have the right answer or the strongest answer yet, brainstorm internally, how can we, make sure that what we are going to share here is strong enough to get to the table. So that's what I see often. A lot of focus on the technology, like the technology will sell itself, which is not the case. You need to be beyond the state of the art, but the technology is not everything. The best technologies have never made it, right? It's about the total package must make sense before you really get there. And yeah, just remember, like also in a fund, they see so many leads on a daily basis. So you have to really catch their attention with something. And also respect, like the time that they have. So the better you are prepared and the better you respect their time, the bigger the chance that you will have a good conversation. And what we also see what happens very often is that when there is a conversation and some agreements are made, for example, some additional information needs to be sent, then maybe it takes a couple of months before information is sent. That really annoys our fund. So what we also see, or for example, that they're in discussion with another investor at the same time and they think, oh, that investor is maybe more interesting. And then they hold off or they don't tell anything for a couple of weeks or so, or there's no interaction anymore. And then they come back after 2 months. Then you also lost your chance. So make sure that you stay in, if you had that meeting, stay in touch, keep each other updated, super important. Also, if you don't have, if you're not ready yet, make sure that you stay in contact because you also need to take them seriously.
Very good advice.
Yeah?
Liselotte, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have any idea or thinking around this topic? You probably have a lot of experience also with other startups, I'm guessing.
Yeah, with other startups. Thank you for the presentation. I think it also emphasizes that in general, we have a very similar image that, as you said, you face sort of a wall. It's relatively easy to find research funding. It's relatively easy, like the CETP funding and Horizon funding and national funding. There are usually a lot of good ways and a big will from governments then indirectly or policy to sort of support research and innovation. And then you sort of hit this wall when all of a sudden you need to have basically a whole sales team just to sell the innovation. And that I think is a realization that you actually need to have that. It isn't enough with the technology. I wish there were, and I wish that it was the best technology that actually is innovated and reaches that point. Because you said you're expected to sort of cater and sell this and be prepared and have all the answers when you are at a stage where you don't even know how well this is work. You cannot, we don't know ourselves until we have scaled it up. So we basically need to sell it. And that's a really hard discussion to have, because at some point we also want to have partners who can sort of understand that there are uncertainties, that there are setbacks, that we need to have buffer, and that we need to have time to develop, but we need to have the whole package and sell it already at TRL 5. And that is, as you said, it is the value of death, and it's really hard to bridge.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. We will now have about 5 minutes when I show a little bit about how we support our projects, and then we will continue our dialogue with all the speakers. But at this point, I thank both Neeltje and Liselotte for this round, and you can take a brief break, get some more coffee or tea, and be here, or please stay here, but still, I'm going to show now a little bit about how we support our projects. So let me go first to the impact library. So we talked about, I believe you can see this now, yes? We talked a little bit about the tools already in the beginning, and with Bilge's presentation, we talked about the societal readiness tool that we have here in the library. So the Impact Library, it serves as a resource for the projects and the TRIs, which are a body within the CET partnership, looking for useful methodologies and ways to work successfully with various stakeholders. So the idea is that from the Impact Network, you might find ideas and perhaps real contacts, and from this resource here, the library, you could find some ways to work, how to work with various stakeholders. So it's a collection of instructional videos, guidelines, workshop concepts to help you work together. First of all, in this orange folder here, you can find the training webinars that we have organized. We have organized 6 of them to kind of span the whole journey from lab to market. So from design thinking to validating your prototypes with end users, so stakeholders, commercialization essentials, building your exploitation strategy, key exploitable results, and maximizing your chances for demonstration funding. And then under these 5 different categories, stakeholder engagement, exploitation and impact, policy and regulation, markets and commercialization, and society and sustainability, you have various tools. So the first tool that people usually would use would be finding the stakeholders, identifying them. So we call it the quadruple helix stakeholder tool or mapping. So when you open it, you can see here a little description of what this tool does, what its purpose is, what kind of participants you would need to have involved on using this, what kind of steps you would take, so how would you organize a workshop, and how you work with the canvases that we have here for you, and some expected impacts, next steps, and tips for the organizer. And on the bottom here, you can see download tool. And here you will have the canvases that you can use for your workshop, or if you're doing this with your team, then with your team. So here you have a canvas for reasons for stakeholder engagement, then some example answers so that you don't have to start from scratch, and then how you identify and map your stakeholders in the next stage, again with some examples for you to use. So that's how the stakeholder engagement or the quadruple helix stakeholder tool looks like. Then you can move on to stakeholder engagement and, for instance, your policy brief planning tool. And we talked about the societal readiness tool. You can find it here under society and sustainability. So here we have societal readiness tool. So again, steps to take, how you prepare for a workshop, how you organize a workshop with the necessary participants, what kind of participants you would need. And then here you can download the tool again. Here you have a societal readiness assessment canvas with some guidelines and the actual societal readiness scale here at the end. So as I said, it mimics the TRL scale going from 1 to 9, from identifying a problem and societal readiness within your team, and then towards finding more and more actual evidence from feedback with the stakeholders. So that's how it works. And I will stop sharing that now and go back to our presentation, or the main presentation. And for that, I will need to share with sound. Share with sound. And let's take our presentation in here. And I will show you a 1-minute video about how we support our projects, and the Impact Network and Impact Library are mentioned there as well. So here it goes.
Welcome to CET Partnership Impact Support, your guide to impactful innovation in clean energy. For an innovation to grow, it needs to increase its maturity. By improving the commercial readiness, sustainability, and social acceptance of your solution, you can pave the way for further funding and investment. We help your project succeed with targeted training in areas like engaging stakeholders, effective exploitation, and preparing for commercialization. Our matchmaking events connect you with the right partners to strengthen your project's impact and reach. The Impact Network is a comprehensive gathering of stakeholders tailored to help your innovations move from lab to market. Our Impact Library is a toolbox of essential methodologies, instructional videos, and best practices to enhance collaboration and success. Join us in driving the clean energy transition. Together, we can create lasting change and build a sustainable future.
So there.
Welcome to
Let's see if we can move forward. Great. So now we move on to our final part. So we call this the shared reflection part. And we would like to hear from you what you think, where collaboration is most needed and what kind do we need more of. So we have more than 100 people present here, so we can't interview everyone. We therefore have this Menti platform on which to do this. And at this point, I think I will give the floor to Susanna, my colleague, who has prepared this Menti platform, and she can give you the instructions. Go ahead, Susanna.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. All right, so you can either use the link I put in the chat to use Menti directly on desktop, or you can shoot the QR code with the camera of your phone if you would rather use your phone for this. You can also go to menti.com and enter the code below, but I think it would be easier to use the link in the chat or the QR code. Now I will move on to sharing the actual Menti platform. I assume you can see it now?
Yes, we can see it now. We see that more and more people are joining the Menti platform. We already have 39, we have 40. When we have enough, then we will start the questions. We just want to make sure that everybody who wants to answer these questions, because this is your way also to influence us at CET Partnership when we try to improve our support for you projects. We are getting a lot of thumbs up. That's great. So let's wait until we have hopefully about 50 participants, and then we'll move forward and we will have the dialogue with our speakers while we will be getting those answers. Let's see
and the
how
QR
that
code
can
will
go.
also be accessible during the questions, and the link in the chat will also work during the questions, so you can join in if you are getting a cup of coffee at the moment.
Yes. And at this point, I would like to ask all our speakers to join the stage with their videos on. And now we have 50. Great. So now we can start with the questions. You can also answer these questions, you speakers, if you wish. But I'd mostly like to get your viewpoints when we start getting these answers. So the first question is, in one word, what often slows down clean energy innovations? And while we are getting this, I'd actually like to ask Pilvi. You had a really nice discussion going on with Bilge in the chat. So while we wait for people to get around this question, would you like to ask your question now out loud? I believe it was about the relationship of technological and societal readiness and whether risk investments should kind of help there. Do you have your microphone rights? Actually, Susanna probably can give them to you.
Hear me now?
Quite low. Can you speak up?
Yes, I can. Just a moment, please. Can you hear me now better?
Yes, this is fine.
Well, actually, I'm worrying a bit about the speed of the technological improvements, like right now, in a kind of sense of innovators and markets and people in general. So that because future innovations are highly speculative at this point, and the speed of technical and technological development is very high. So how markets and people keep up with this development? So when you are an innovator, you should listen to the markets, and that's very important. But sometimes crowds cannot see the progress, and when we are kind of making progress so fast with the technological improvements, it's very difficult for commons to understand kind of the future and the actions which must be done. And on the other hand, there is the continuous circle. As an innovator, once you have attractive slides and communication, you will be asked of the technological skills. And once you have some software or technological skills, then you are asked about communications, so that you are in an ongoing circle trying to improve your skills and your product or service or whatever your innovation is. But it's a tricky job, I would say. And that's why I only wanted to kind of highlight the importance of understanding of technological readiness level in the compared with social readiness level, and how they kind of fit in the society we have right now. Yes. In the sense of technological improvement and the speed of it. Yes. Did you get my point?
Yes, there are many aspects of this that we could talk about. Is there our speakers? Do you want to? You can raise your hand if you want to answer this, or give your own perspective on this, the speed of development and societal readiness and technological readiness. One thing that I thought was really interesting that you said, Pilvi, in the chat was that there was someone else also who mentioned that you need higher TRL before you can get really societal readiness, societal acceptance and readiness involved. Whereas many of our presentations really showed that you have to start working on that already with low TRL. So this was kind of the critical question there. And then you mentioned, Pilvi, that sometimes you need risk investment to develop the technology. And Bilge said that, yes, the technology must be ready enough and there must be some evidence of how it works so that people in society will be able to actually judge whether they trust it or not. So it's kind of a cat and mouse thing. You need the societal readiness, you need social acceptance to move forward in developing your technology and to get investments for it. Because if there is no acceptance, you won't get investment. But on the other hand,
and now
what are your thoughts?
At this point, as we see the improvements in AI, for example, it's so fast that people don't kind of keep up with the progress that is ongoing there. So it's pretty hard to kind of find social acceptance to the future solutions, which might be very affordable for us all. Did you understand what I'm trying to say?
Let's see what Neeltje you have in mind.
Yeah, I was also thinking about the co-development. Like whenever there really is a need for a market, there's like an industry or an organization that is so interested in your technology that they want to co-develop with you, or they pay for a part of the development. So without maybe directly having the need for an investor, that can also, like bridge a gap. So you need to be very early in discussion with your customers. And of course, this depends. Do you have an industrial application, or do you have an application which is made for consumers where it's more difficult? But when you have an industrial application, having a co-developer really shows interest. So it can really speed up your innovation and actually show that there's a need in the market, because they will only do that when there actually is a need and there's something that they need to be fixed for their own business purposes as well.
That's right. Actually, your sound is a little bit breaking up now, Neeltje. I don't know if you change your... But yes, thank you very much. Let's move a little bit forward. Let's see what we have here. We have, in one word, what often slows down clean energy innovations? Financing is number one. Regulation, clearly number two in 2 words. So they could actually be the first word, probably. uptake, risk, uncertainty, capex, public acceptance. So very much around the same things we have been talking about here. So the technology alone definitely won't solve this. Let's move on to the next question at this point and keep in mind what we saw now. So here we have a multiple choice. Which type of actor is most critical to engage for the progress of a solution? And now if you are an innovator, you can think about your own solution. What have you found? What type of an actor is most critical to engage for the progress of your solution? And if you are a stakeholder, then you can think about all the solutions where you have been part of, or the kind of solutions you would like to see going forward. What type of actors do you think are most critical to engage for the progress of clean energy solutions that you are working with? While we see people starting to answer this, I'd actually like to ask Jean-Luc and Kimmo to comment on this ETS thing. This is really problematic now. Kimmo and Jean-Luc, we spoke with you too actually before the event a little bit. So Kimmo, might you want to start with your thoughts about the ETS, and quite concisely because we have many things to talk about. So the main problem there, what do you think, and why is it happening?
Well, first of all, I think it's good to remember that ETS is a first of its kind in this world, EU ETS. 2004, it came into force. It was first regulated, or it was first decided to have on 2004 in the EU, and it took roughly 10 years before it started to kick in the sense that it really incentivized, and it's really made sense from the polluter point of view to invest in the decarbonization. And why was that? It was simply because of the introductory period during which there was free allowances, and because of the free allowances, ample free allowances, the price of the emission trading allowance was very low, 4 to 5 euro per ton of CO2. So clearly that was not enough to really motivate the players. Then the Commission and all of us, including the industry, we started to sort of improve and develop the rules and regulations that went into the ETS, and then the ETS price started to come up. Other things happened also. We had energy crisis, and finally we started to reach the level of 50 euro per ton of CO2. Now we are 77 today. The prediction says that it will be around 120, 130. So now actually what is happening is that it really is effective tool to really incentivize and motivate people to decarbonize. Having said this, as always, there were throughout this journey, which has lasted now more than 20 years actually, throughout this journey, there were players in the market who were early adapters, who were like us, who were front runners and decided, okay, we will jump into this train or into this wagon and we will decarbonize so that we will not face the cost. And there were also others who were saying, okay, 2 to 3 years, 3 euros, then we will just absorb it and we don't change our processes. And this goes for the electricity production, energy production, electricity production. It goes for the steel and chemical industry. And now that we are reaching the levels that were predicted already roughly 10 years ago, some of the players who didn't do their early homework, they are starting to suffer really badly, whereas some are then enjoying the benefits. Now the problem lies in the fact that now that there are some quite major member states, and I don't want to name them because this is not the blame and shame game, but some member states who didn't decarbonize their energy and electricity production early enough, now they are suffering badly for an obvious reason. And now they are saying, up, let's slow down. Let's not go so fast. Let's deregulate.
Okay. Yes, I get that. I didn't actually think of it that way. That those would be maybe the countries that are slowing this down, that didn't get on board and are kind of starting to get left behind. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Yeah,
and not only member states, but also companies. There are in division in between the member states also. Some companies, some steel companies, in some countries, they are more eager and they are more embracing the decarbonization, and then some are not. And of course, those who are not, if they are vocal enough, and unfortunately, this is how politics works, if you are very vocal, even if you don't have anything good to say, you get your will through, and then those who are already there, they may not be all the time defending the ETS.
Yes. That's actually, I remember something that you, Jean-Luc, said, that at the moment policymakers are not necessarily making the best choices for, let's say, Europe, but they are listening to those that can shout the loudest.
Exactly.
You said it like that.
Exactly, that's true.
Yes. So, okay, let's see what we have here. We have now, I think I will need to take my other glasses that will allow me to see a little bit closer. We have regulators about compliance, permitting requirements at the tying with policymakers that are here about laws, incentives, direction of the system that we were just now talking about. We have industry and end users as the biggest type of actor that is most critical to engage, according to the people here. And then we have customers at maybe place 3, and then we have private investors at place 4, and then we have supply chains, industrial partners, infrastructure operators, for instance, grid, gas networks, utilities. Of course, this depends on what kind of technologies are represented here today. Local authorities, municipalities, local communities like energy communities or local acceptance, and NGOs. Not clear. Nobody says actually that they are not clear, or maybe they would not be replying this. But yes, this looks really understandable. I'm a little surprised that local communities are at so low level, because we have heard how social acceptance can block innovations. I believe, Bilge, especially you had some comments about that. Are you here with us? If you are, I'd like to hear your comment about this. What do you think of this distribution from your point of view? Because it looks to me a little bit like this would be a distribution for really deep tech technologies that do not necessarily face everyday people, but your innovation does. So how does this look to you?
Actually, it depends on the municipality's responsible field. For example, for urban constructions, infrastructures, municipalities or local actors are very important in Turkish case. And for the other technologies, or for the other clean energy technologies, for example, for the wind technology, of course, the agricultural cooperatives or agricultural communities will be always active actors in our research. But if the public authorities listen their voices, I mean, if they have the legal tool, like municipalities, they are powerful actors. But if they are only agricultural communities and have any legal power, then their voices cannot be as much loud as the municipalities. I mean, the local, as an example of local actors.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Let's go to the next question at this point. We have 2 more questions and then the final, what did you learn today? So what kind of interaction would actually help engage these actors more effectively? And this is an open question. You can just answer with 1 word or a couple of words or a sentence. And let's get started on this one. What kind of interaction would actually help, in your opinion? And this is again something where CET Partnership could learn from you to help you do this better. If there are some ways where you would need a bigger platform to work with, or if there is something that some kind of interaction that you can do on a project basis. So don't be shy, start answering, and we get a few answers in. Communicating that energy prices will steadily climb. climb, probably that means that energy prices will be going up. Contractual or partnership type of interaction. Not only engaging, but actually partnering up. That's great. Living lab use case, clear policy. That is something we have definitely heard about. Testing concepts with end users or industry at early stage, definitely. End users were the most important group in the previous question. To engage in significant interactions with the academy, so that means academia, so this is probably a stakeholder that is highlighting this. Public forums, physical interactions, pilot projects and real-world demonstrations, really many types of interaction is present here. Early education for citizens, so that's also a kind of something that would take us forward towards public acceptance. Science communication, political intervention. Excellent. Clear value propositions. So what is it that an innovation would actually, how would it benefit the customer that nobody else can do? Arranging competitive education on the field of commercialization of new tech. Yes, commercialization really is a skill, requires networks and skills and capabilities. And finally, seamless and easy communication with messaging channels like Discord, WhatsApp. Vouchers would be needed to pay for the economic evaluation of patents. And political intervention has been mentioned quite many times. Excellent. This is very good. Now we have to move forward, unfortunately, because we have so little time. The next question, I believe, is for our stakeholders. Yes. What would make it worthwhile for you to engage with innovation projects, such as ours, CET partnerships or any, or solutions? Because not all stakeholders can find the time. It may be difficult to find the time to work with scientists or companies that are developing new products. And while you are answering this, stakeholders, if you are still present, Neeltje, a quick comment from you, and then we have to go to our final question.
Yeah, I thought maybe it's easier to like explain my response to this than to write it down, because for me, because we work in public and private funding, for us it's any CET partnership project could be interesting to engage with, right? Because whenever there is innovation happening and like winning a CET partnership grant already means that there is a validation of the technology in the part. So to like build upon that, for us it's easy to think along like, okay, what could be next steps for funding, like as well as in the public way as in potentially the private way. So for me it's anyways interesting to engage. So whenever there's an interest, people can reach out.
Excellent, good to know. So anyone, that's actually a good way of that's one way to de-risk the case if it has received funding from someone like CET Partnership. So that's a good kind of test of the relevance and the validating of the technology. So that's a very good point of view. Strong commitment to platform developers on which new or novel technologies will be integrated. If there is a real will to innovate and not only finance your own stuff, that's I know what that is about. I spent 17 years in the academic field, so I know how important it is there to find funding for doing your own stuff, but I also understand it might not be so interesting to all stakeholders. Clear research tools and guides. Small is beautiful. Very good. Sharing digital experiences and particular use cases. The inspiring and innovative atmosphere. The clear goal, novelty, ecological value. And finally, creating a foundation for multinational collaborations in the development of technologies that benefit all humanity. Identify cross-cutting and overlaps. And clean pathway in joining common projects, for instance, like the project booster of Click Innovation. Click Innovation is a green transition innovation cluster. Excellent, thank you very much. And now the final question, which is, what did you learn today? So one word, one little sentence. what did you learn today? And while you are answering this question, I will use the time to give my final words and summary while you are doing this. So from my perspective, I would say, if I try to summarize what we've heard today across all 3 rounds and all of our discussions, one thing becomes very clear, at least to me. I think we have really made the case that it's not only the technology that determines what moves forward towards society, but the interaction around it. And we've heard that it really matters at different stages early on, where you need to understand the real needs and the context. It matters during the scaling up to align the expectations and to reduce the risk, of which we have heard so much today. And in the commercialization phase, where you really need to build trust with the customers, with the investors, and where you need to build a shared understanding around of what you're trying to do. So importantly, it's not just more interaction, but it needs to be the right kind. It needs to be targeted, it needs to be timely, and it needs to be grounded in real use cases and real constraints, where also the standards, the labels, the certifications, all of those things come to play. So from our side in CET Partnership, we will definitely take these insights forward. We'll continue to strengthen how we support our projects and applicants, and we warmly invite all of you stakeholders to stay engaged with us and our projects through all of our collaborative impact events like this one was. Through LinkedIn, you can find out about what we do there, and we also organize different types of matchmaking sessions, typically around October and November. It's really clear to me that this kind of interaction doesn't happen by accident or by itself, so it really needs to be built, and it needs to be supported, and it needs to be sustained. So at this point, I'll see what we have here. What did you learn today? To have the full plan at an early stage. Societal readiness, strength comes from unity, how hard it is to get private financing. Importance of working together at different TRLs, lots going on. We work with similar challenges. I didn't expect CET projects to be so wide in scope. That's interesting. Yes, it's very wide. We have typically 10 different core modules every year, 7 different main themes. The need to strengthen international cooperation, multi-objective design in order to carry out a complete SRL assessment, and the circle of different strategies that Catalyze is involved in the business building was very clear. All the elements must be available in the early phase, not waiting for the discussion, do your homework. That's great. So at this point, warm thank you to all of our speakers. You did a great job, and you prepared so well for this, and you used so much of your own time. So thank you very much. And thank also to everybody in the audience for your reflections and contributions. And as we mentioned, the recording and presentations of this event will appear on the event website as soon as possible. And after that, we hope to continue the conversation with you. Thank you once more, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.